At the recent City Council meeting held in Barrie City Hall, various issues and motions were deliberated and passed. Notably, local residents turned out in force to air their grievances over a proposed development at 405 Essa Road. With over 550 signatures gathered in opposition to the project, the residents implored the council to reject the new development proposal. They voiced concern over the increased density of the project and appealed for the officials to stand with the community. Councillor Nigusi, at the forefront of the negotiation, assured the residents of the Council's commitment to their concerns and the ongoing efforts to reach a compromise before the matter escalates to the Ontario Land Tribunal. While expressing optimism about the proposed settlement, he explained that the details remain confidential for now. In the other council business, the city's wastewater initiatives were reported to have generated a revenue of $125,000 through the revival of wastewater-related program. Mayor Alex Nuttall also addressed the introduction of a lobbyist registry and the appointment of a lobbyist registrar. He underscored that the registry aims to document lobbying initiatives and not stifle communication between council members. He asserted that the individuals that need to document and clarify this lobbying are those doing the lobbying and not the members of the council. And Craig Stevens of Downtown Barrie BIA made a presentation concerning downtown's 350 local Main Street businesses. With a budget of more than $600,000, he underscored the importance of making downtown Barrie more walkable and pedestrian-friendly. Such improvements would ultimately support local businesses and make public spaces more inviting and friendly. Use the timestamps provided in the description to navigate to the relevant part of the video.
Welcome to Barrie City Council. We'll be going through the minutes, and as members of council are aware, there's some deputations for this evening. We'll begin moving past student mayors, as there are none, to the confirmation of the minutes. As the first item on the agenda, the minutes of the City Council meeting held on April 19th, 2023 have been circulated. Are there any corrections of the minutes? Seeing none, the minutes are adopted. There are no awards and recognition or reports from officers. So we are going to move on to deputations for the evening. Tonight there are 4 deputations and another 4 emergency deputation requests. The 3 emergency deputation requests were received from Taisha Twiss, Carl Buckheit, and Wayne Doucette concerning motion 23-G-098, the confidential litigation matter of the Ontario Land Tribunal, Essa Road. And Madam Clerk, there was a 4th whose name is?
The 4th one is named Laura Fess.
Laura Fess, thank you. As the requests were received after the print of the agenda, a 2/3 majority vote is required by members of council in order for the emergency deputations to proceed. All those in favor of the emergency deputations, please raise your hands. And those opposed, there's none, and it is carried. The first deputation that we will have this evening is concerning motion 23-G-097, the cycling implementation. The cycling implementation for Grove Street and Dunlop Street, Blake Street, Wards 1 and 2. Mr. Walter Wagter is unable to attend tonight's meeting. He has submitted his deputation in writing through the City Clerk, which is permissible by the procedural bylaw. His comments will be included as an attachment to the council meeting this evening. Madam Clerk, can you confirm that?
Yes, Mayor Nuttall, they'll be included as an attachment to the minutes of this meeting.
Thank you so much. So next we'll move into the deputations with regards to the confidential litigation matter. Please note that in accordance with our procedural bylaw, a maximum of 5 minutes is permitted per deputation. Prior to the deputations proceeding, I would like to read the recommendation that has been approved by General Committee at 5 p.m. this evening. Number 1, that the report concerning the status of the appeal of the zoning bylaw amendment application file number D30 0112021 to the Ontario Land Tribunal, OLT, as submitted by Innovative Planning Solutions on behalf of Sean Mason Homes, Inc., to rezone the lands municipally known as 405 Essa Road from residential multiple dwelling second density with special provision, hold RM2, special provision 562, and hold 138 to mixed use corridor with special provisions MU2 SP-XXX be received for information purposes. 2, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the proposed minutes of the settlement attached as Appendix A to staff report DEV 021-23 as amended by confidential direction provided by General Committee at the meeting held on May 3rd, 2023 to the satisfaction of the Director of Development Services and the Director of Legal Services. Before we get into the deputations, I just have a reminder for members of the public who are making the deputations this evening. I'd like to remind you that those deputations who have been involved with the Ontario Land Tribunal process, that these matters are still considered confidential and can't be discussed in public forum. If you do start to discuss the details of the proposed settlement, I'll be forced to ask the clerk to turn off the microphone, as they are considered confidential and before the courts. I will now call upon David McKenzie to come down to the podium to provide the deputation for this evening.
Good evening. My name is David McKenzie. I'm one of the two parties to the, other than the city and the developer, to the current OLT appeal process involving the city and the applicant. I'm a 30-year resident of the immediately adjacent community next to 405 Essa on City View Circle. Malcolm Hackborn is the other party to the appeal, neighbor from my street as well, and unfortunately he's out of the country today and can't be with us. In the first tribunal process, which you know we lost, many of the very same concerns regarding the impact of the particular form and density for this proposal, this intensification project proposal, were raised then. Our concerns then, as now, were never ones of NIMBYism, as has been suggested by some. And although we lost that first appeal, we respected the tribunal's decision and fully expected the property to be quickly developed according to that much less aggressive proposal. Compare a density of 59 units per hectare, which was approved by the LPAT, with the current proposal, which is very closely 350 units per hectare. It's a huge difference. So we were then surprised to see only a half a year later a new proposal calling for an 8-story building with this high intensity and townhouses as well. And that's what we're here to talk about tonight, and especially you to talk about tonight, although I don't know there's going to be much talk. First, I'd like to acknowledge that we don't fault the developer for wanting to increase density. That's pretty natural, and it's his right to do that. I also recognize that the provincial policy changes that have been made over the past couple of years have made it much harder for cities to keep up and even to deal with these types of proposals. Those changes have been coming very rapidly, and everybody here, especially in the audience, should realize that they came as recently as a newly proposed provincial policy statement which arose on April 6th of this year. So we know it's hard to work through this, and I hope you recognize as well that it makes it even harder for us, the community members, who are trying to represent in this type of an environment where we don't have for the most part, no lawyers, no engineers, no planning people with that kind of experience. It's only what we've acquired through these processes over the past few years. I suspect that as locally elected officials, and also mostly not professionals in the field of land development, you must rely very strongly upon the recommendations made by your staff. And I can understand that. I know how hard it is for me to grasp, and I've been actually working for this, over this particular project development proposal for about 5 years, and it's still hard. In this regard, I'd like to, excuse me, one moment, I lost my, yeah, in this regard, I wanted to okay. I've actually lost something. Anyway, I really wanted to thank Peter Krisiak, the lawyer, and Councillor Negussi for arranging a very late in the process offer or coordination of mediation, which only happened extremely recently. Okay, and that was very generous for them to do. The decision ultimately for the tribunal will take place next Monday. So like I said, this is very, very, very last minute. Tonight, for everybody's sake, I pray that your decision will result in a development proposal that achieves for the city the positive outcome that we're looking for as a community. But before you vote, I want to remind you that in this second appeal process, in which our community faces over-intensification on only a quarter-hectare lot. It's a very small place. With a poorly considered transition to our existing neighborhood and the surroundings, we were able to arrange and muster considerable growth in the support from the community compared to the first round. This time we have over 550 signatories to the petition that was brought forward. And when further intrusive and overly intensified development proposals like this one arise, I think that community opposition to such proposals will only continue to arise. It's going to grow even further, and right now, with the way the framework that's being proposed by, an approach that's being proposed by provincial government is being put forward, I think this is going to become it's going to become a recurring theme.
So, sir, I have to apologize. We're about a minute over right now. So if I could ask you to...
I'll give one paragraph and I'm done, okay?
Wonderful. Thank you, sir.
All right. So because of the possibility of future troubles like this, I think it's going to be much better if you can send a clear signal tonight on this dispute in support of your community, okay? Unbalanced proposals will arise again, and there will be much more difficult ones to deal with in the future. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing that with us this evening and for your respectful manner as well, sir. I'm going to ask Mr. Graham Montgomery to come and approach the microphone. Yeah, that's completely fine if that's what you prefer.
I have a lot of pages.
Ma'am, could you just state your name for me?
Peggy Hill.
Oh, sorry. Yes, how are you?
Good, how are you? Good evening, Mayor Natal, councillors, city staff, and members of the public. My name is Peggy Hill, and I'm one of the residents of City View Circle. My family has lived there for 15 years. First, I'd like to thank my neighbors for showing up to positively communicate our concerns through public protest tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to speak on this proposal tonight before you vote. I'm hoping you will be able to understand how this invasive and out-of-step proposal will shatter many lives and affect the property values on City View Circle. I would like to be clear, we're not asking for special treatment, we're not opposed to growth, nor are we complaining about additional housing to be built in the city. All we want is the process followed as would any other citizen in the city. We are merely asking that you review the reports to address the traffic, the density, the height, the parking, privacy, and transition and safety of the residents of our subdivision. We have nothing directly from the applicant or his planner to address our concerns from December 2021. When the planner's representative declared that the applicant would be providing a response, we heard nothing. As a neighborhood concerned about this proposal, we were forced to fundraise and hire a planning firm, Skelton & Brumwell, to study the application at 405 Essa and determine if it met requirements. Between January and March 2022, my neighbors reached out several times to City Planning Department through past Councillor Natalie Harris to ask the status of the application, and we were just always told we are waiting for a response from the applicant. Imagine our concern and shock when we discovered the loophole that the applicant was using to circumvent the process and to go to the Ontario Land Tribunal based on the fact the City of Barrie not deciding on his application in a timely fashion. Why are we forced to participate in the legal process now when this should have been addressed back then? Now that this is considered a legal matter, we were left with no choice but to hire more representation through legal and planning avenues to help address our concerns in this new process. I want to express the importance of understanding the impact that it will have on everyone, but especially to the residents living at 21 City View Circle, my lovely neighbor, Anne. Anne is a single mom raising an autistic child who is highly sensitive to noise. Having the construction taking place directly next to her property will cause extreme distress to her son and will impact his well-being directly. Now, even though she would have wanted to sell her home, she couldn't have because of this development and all this ordeal. If this development is completed as proposed, her home value will decrease significantly. In addition, her property will now lose all sense of privacy. And Anne is spending sleepless nights worried about how this project will affect her family and her foundation, and it's affected her mental health. She purchased this home on City View with privacy and quiet in mind, and after living there for 24 years, paying her taxes year after year, it could all be taken away from her. Her voice needs to be heard, and someone needs to stand up for her. I'm begging you to consider her and her family's well-being, as well as my neighbors that will be directly impacted by this decision. In addition, the proposal you are reviewing now includes walkways to our street. Councillors, you know as well as I do, that will result in more traffic, parking disruptions to our street. Often these new developments have little or no visitor parking. So we are left to take on the burden of that parking. We're getting out of our circle right now is really challenging, trying to turn on Ferndale, and many times we're not able to. We have to make a right instead of a left. So more traffic is not going to help us any. Again, we have been consulted on very little, instead been told what is happening long after we've been voiced our concern. We had hoped to have our concerns addressed. Councillors Nagazi and Harvey have tried very hard to assist us, and we want to say thank you for explaining the process and listening to our concerns. Past Councillors Harris and Trotter also understood the devastating impact of this application would have on our neighbors and were against what was proposed. Now, in closing, we trust that Mayor Natal and councillors will look at this plan, look at what we have as a community group and present it, and vote the proposal down, as to send a clear message to the OLT adjudicator that the citizens of Barrie deserve an orderly and well-situated development that doesn't compromise our official plan. It is imperative that we address the impact that this will have on the lives of the people surrounding the development and the safety of Barrie residents, and could be living close to proximity to this proposal and those traveling Essa Road. The proposal cannot be allowed to proceed without a clear no voted on. I have lived in the city for over 30 years, and I've never come in front of you to ask for anything. Although this development doesn't affect me really directly, it affects all my neighbors, and I felt it was important that someone speak up for them. I want you to do the right thing, and it's not fair for residents to lose money on their property values because of this. We just want the right thing to happen. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hill, for your deputation this evening, and also wanted to make sure that I said thank you while I wasn't around the table at the time, but you obviously believe in your community, and thank you for the contribution over to the Peggy Hill Team Center as well. I'd like to call upon Mr. Graham Montgomery to come to the microphone now for deputation.
Graham Montgomery, 53 City View Circle. Thank you, Mayor, Council, and staff for this opportunity to speak to you. I know you have voted. However, I think that you still need to recognize that there is some room for us to try and get across what we have been experiencing. I would like to speak why we felt that voting no to this development proposal is critical. We residents believe voting no is critical to all Barrie residents, current and future. I'd also like to let you know that I'm representing the folks at 369 Essa Road, known as Phase 1 and 2. I've come to know them, or we have come to know them over the past 7 years of dealing with this applicant. When putting forward the previous plan in 2018 of development for 405 Essa, which was in sync with the previous two phases, these existing residents were shown numerous times drawings of amenity space, and they were all going to share this wonderful amenity space at the back of the proposed Phase 3. After residents appealed Council's decision in 2019 to approve that previous application, that proposal with adequate amenity space was thrown out the window with this new application. At the time of the appeal of the 2019 Council decision to approve the previous plan of development, the applicant took to social media to try and say that we were all NIMBYs. We were the ones to blame for the loss of amenity space. Imagine how the residents of 369 Essa feel now. Plans were consistently presented to them to show them that they were going to have amenity space. Now what they're going to get asked for is a variance so that garbage trucks and delivery trucks can use their entranceway and cross their driveways, and potentially use what little amenity space they have with this 8-story building that's been proposed. Voting no can again send a message that applicants should respect the process of development and not change what was actually presented to Barrie residents. We also realized and would like to bring into the open the questions about why did we appeal that particular application in 2018. Let me address this square on. The residents gave many suggestions for reducing the impact of the first proposed development, and most were ignored. The residents then appealed the 2018 decision to allow the form of development of 405 Essa to the OLT, called the LPAT at the time. The City of Barrie sought to dismiss our concerns, and indeed, the OLT said no, their concerns are valid, and allowed the hearing to proceed. LPAT then made a decision on that appeal and allowed the development to proceed with several holding provisions attached to it, as the city had asked for. But now the developer threw that out and started with another even more blatant and intrusive plan. As Peggy mentioned, we had to hire a planning firm to study this, and their preliminary report indicated several inherent inconsistencies with good planning practices. What's really troubling is the lack of a fulsome and public response to the concerns of the 557 residents who signed the petition opposing this plan. The public meeting of December 2021 and any public discussion around jamming this development onto this land without any consultation is jarring and potentially precedent-setting for development applications in our city. Further, the tactic of forcing the process to be heard by an adjudicator at the OLT and therefore forcing residents to hire not only legal representation but a planning firm, both of which the applicant and his financial backers are capable of, because this is their profit-making expense. This reminds me of the mindset that we're dealing with this particular application. We area residents attended a public meeting in January 2019 for the Chula Vista property at 390 Essa, during which this applicant's planning representative, who was at the time also representing the 390 Essa Road applicant, publicly stated to residents when being questioned about plans for development in Ferndale Essa area that residents really have two choices when it comes to development: work with them or move. Nice choices to be presented with. Again, Mayor, Council, we were counting on that more fulsome, peer-reviewed, and properly sequenced plan of development. So again, we're asking you to really think about your vote. Peggy had spoken about the nearest neighbor to this, Ann Lemerquin, at 21 City View. The fact that nobody has reached out to allay her fears is absolutely unconscionable. The City of Barrie Planning Department, you could very well ensure that Ann's foundation and her home will be protected for a lifelong guarantee before you settle on any proposal. Perhaps it's too late for that. It is our understanding, however, in fairness, that there was a discussion initiated yesterday by Ward Councillor Nagussi, and for goodness sake, it was just yesterday. So perhaps there's been some movement that I'm not aware of because I am not part of the OLT mediation. Voting no sends a message to the OLT that we would feel that though we would need to show that people in the development community, that residents need to have a say in our development in our city, and those residents who have worked hard to follow the development guidelines without malice, and were backed by our elected officials. Believe me, there'd be little resistance to development in our neighborhood, and by extension Barrie, if it grew in a planned and sustainable way. And I didn't have to end up here for the fourth time. Once again, Mayor, Council, please listen to common sense. If there was a more sustainable plan, please allow us to have that. This plan is just pure punishment. Help protect us and the future and vote no. Thank you for your time and attention to this development application. We know how much effort has been put into this saga, particularly by you, Councillor Nagussi, and you, Councillor Hargey. Mayor Nuttall, thank you for your time as well. Thank you all, and thanks to all my neighbors who came out tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Montgomery, for your presentation this evening as well. I'm now going to call upon Taisha Twist to come to the podium. And by the smiles, I am not pronouncing your name right.
But you are, but it's okay.
But I am, but I'm not. Okay.
Mayor, Council, and Tasha, and staff, sorry, my name is Tasha Twist, and no offense taken. Thank you so much for the opportunity. So I am a resident of City View Circle. We live at 38 City View Circle. My husband and I have been there for 20 plus years raising our children. We live less than 40 meters from this current development, so it has a very significant impact to us as well. We are very, very proud residents of Barrie, proud members of this community, and would like to continue to feel that way and feel supported. We have a lot of concerns with the gross intensification in this small parcel of land and how it is going to impact us both in our value of our home and the ongoing issues that it has already brought with the many challenges around traffic, getting in and out of our circle, the current location of many of the buildings that are yet to be built are also going to cause great concern. So again, I just wanted to take an opportunity to make sure that Council council is aware of the incredible strength and partnership with all of our neighbors and other community members that have come together to really support us in this and demonstrate the concerns that we have raised. So I thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tasha. And I will now ask Carl to come down and approach the podium. Yeah, I'm not going to butcher any more names tonight, okay? I learned my lesson.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and councillors, for the opportunity to speak here tonight. Please note that I do have a strong voice, so I'll try to talk as quietly as possible. Anyway, we are here today because of a loophole that was mentioned where the mechanics of the council, where we gave feedback to the planning department, that feedback was taken, but there was a disconnect, a dropping of the ball, where the feedback was not made into a presentation of the feedback back to the developer. Because the developer did not get any communication, we end up here today where the Ontario Land Tribunal, by law, he has the rights to say that he needs to have an Ontario Land Tribunal decision made. That totally circumvents any need for any more council use and approval. There's no need for studies to be taken from these folks here. There's no need to have any evidence or concerns taken anymore, because it will set a precedent. By setting the fact that when Monday comes and the Ontario Land Tribunal gets the green light go to have the developer's 8-story building built, it becomes a new precedent. And that precedent just does not become a precedent for the city of Barrie and one specific ward. It becomes for all the wards across Barrie. It becomes a precedent for all the municipalities across Ontario. Innisfil, Orillia, Alliston, for example, where if someone does not communicate from their planning department back to the developer in the required amount of time from what is specified by the Ontario Land Tribunal Act, then it becomes the right of the developer to be able to go and make a case that he did not get any communication back, and therefore can have his case presented to the OLT to, on its own, decide yes or no, the approval can go ahead without any consideration of studies and feedback from people in the public. So I'm asking here today, the council, think very carefully and consider this. Once you decide to allow this OLT tribunal to say green light go, without any of the input and the concerns that were presented here, you are allowing a dangerous precedent. Dangerous because it totally circumvents the democratic process of a council. Why do we need any more councils anymore if all a contractor can do is put in a case saying, oh, I did not receive any information, I did not receive feedback from a planning department, so therefore I can have the OLT automatically approve my development, which may be a bad development, maybe it's a good development. Regardless, it is a precedent that is set across Ontario. So I'm asking council, please do the right thing. Please do not let this precedent become a precedent that was created in Barrie across Ontario to all municipalities. Please do the right thing, vote no against it, and fix this problem that was occurred because of a loophole that was in the OLT. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, sir, for your presentation this evening. I'll now call upon Wayne Doucette to come down and approach the microphone. Mr. Doucette, you have 5 minutes as well.
Well, I won't need 5 minutes. How do I follow that group? Thank you, Mayor, councilors, city staff for allowing us to grace the chamber here. I'll just speak from my heart. I would just, again, reiterate what everyone else prior to me have said. That's the trouble with being 5th or 6th on the list. I just feel that a great deal of letdown by the city, the councilors, the previous council, the city planners for this messed up arrangement. Like, someone's dropped a ball, someone didn't drop a ball. Everything seems to be put on our shoulders as citizens to go out and pay for planners. They're not cheap, as you well know. Now we probably have to get legal advice, more money out of our pockets. It's really, really affecting our lives. And you just have to admit this is a bad development. It's a bad decision. It goes against every planning guideline the city of Barrie has that I could find on your website and read. Like, it's just so dense that it's just bad. And I feel just let down as a citizen of Barrie. And I'll end that there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Doucette, for your deputation this evening. I'm just going to check with our clerk. Could you remind me of the final individual who was under the emergency request? Could I ask Laura Fest to approach the microphone, please?
Hi, my name's Laura Fess, and I'm at 96, and I thought I'd bring a baby so that you'd listen, because they're cute. I'm here as just a mom and a neighbor, and I have 3 little kids, and I am worried about their safety walking just to the park as it is right now. At dinner tonight, I told my daughter about this, and it's her bedtime. Well, she should be asleep, and so she couldn't come, but I'd like to read what she said, if that's okay. She said, "Mommy, please tell them that this is really silly and that we pretty please say no thank you." And so that's for my little kiddo. And I guess what I would just ask on behalf of that neighbor who will be right beside it is maybe if you're in the South End, grab a Starbucks, come on our street and just see how monstrous this thing will be where it is, right beside this lady's house. And we just appreciate that. So. And I'm just really honored to be your neighbor. I'm kind of new, so we're at 96.
Thank you, Laura, for the presentation this evening for both of you. That's the youngest deputant I've ever seen in the city of Barrie. I believe that ends the deputations for this evening. Thank you so much for the deputations. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Kungl. That Section A of the General Committee report dated May 3rd, 2023 be received.
It's moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Kungl, that Section A of the General Committee report dated May 3rd, 2023 be received. This is the deferred by motion 23-G-098 from General Committee on April 26, 2023. Confidential litigation matter, Ontario Land Tribunal Appeal, Essa Road. Members of the public, this is just again to receive. The next item we deal with is the actual item. Are there any questions or comments on the receiving of the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? It's carried. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Kungl, that Section B of the General Committee report dated May 3rd, 2023 be adopted.
It's moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Kungle, that Section B of the General Committee Report dated May 3rd, 2023 be adopted. This is the deferral by motion 23-G-098 from General Committee on April 26, 2023, confidential litigation matter, Ontario Land Tribunal Appeal, Essa Road. Are there any questions or comments?
Mayor, I would like to speak a few words, please. Good evening again. As a ward councillor, I would like to thank all of the residents for coming forward to speak tonight at the council and for also meeting with me over the past several days and weeks. As a council, we do not make any decision without the input of our residents, stakeholders, and taxpayers. I want you to let you know that I have heard your voice and concerns. I know the residents are not happy, and I would like to simply let you know that while I can't speak to the specific term yet, I want to let you know we negotiate the best possible deal given the circumstances. I have been working very hard with the staff, residents, and developer to try to come to a compromise before the Ontario Land Tribunal. The vote tonight at this council reflects this work, but unfortunately, I'm not in a position to share any details publicly as the terms are confidential until the minutes of settlement are finalized next week and when the hearing is scheduled to begin. I believe the proposed settlement results in a better outcome for the situation than where this was a week ago when this matter was deferred by General Committee, and thanks for coming.
Thank you so much, Councillor Negussi, for your comments or other questions or comments with regards to the matter on the floor. Seeing none, I will call the vote.
Excuse me, Mr. I would like to call a record vote, please.
A recorded vote has been requested, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. I will start with Councillor Rietma.
Yes.
Councillor Nixon.
Yes.
Councillor Kungle.
Yes.
Councillor Corser.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Yes.
Councillor Negussi.
Yes.
Councillor Harvey.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Morales.
Yes.
And Councillor Hamilton.
Yes.
And Mayor Nuttall.
Yes.
The vote carries.
Thank you so much. And Councillor Negussi, you worked very hard on this. Good work. We'll move on past the tax applications and communications. And I would like to ask members of council if there's any objection to altering the order of business as per was discussed previously to allow the Business Improvement Association to provide their presentation prior to the voting on committee reports. Is everyone in agreement on that? Yes, wonderful. So I'll now call upon Craig Stevens to come and approach the microphone. Craig is the Executive Director of our BIA. Craig, welcome to Barrie City Council. It's been a while, has it?
It's been a while, but it feels quick as well, like it hasn't. But this is good setup. Okay. Well, it's nice to see that our downtown councillor has a bird's eye view for this presentation as well. I noticed that, and I wasn't expecting such a big crowd. But anyway, Mayor Nuttall, members of council, city staff, and members of the public, thank you for this opportunity to provide you with an update on the downtown Barrie Business Improvement Area, or otherwise known as the BIA. So in this presentation, I'd like to sort of take you through some history of a BIA, of our BIA, and sort of what it means to, obviously, to the downtown, but collectively, I think the impact of our organization and sort of the makeup of it. So the first point is BIA. That tends to lend some confusion. It's an acronym, and in that acronym, One of the letters, the first word, is typically one that's guessed, so it's business. The second one, the I, is improvement. A little bit harder to determine, but the idea of improvement, I think, lends itself to way back in 1970 when the BIAs were first originated, that at that time, the onset of suburbia, people were moving out of the city cores to the suburban areas. The onset of malls were coming about, so people were flocking out of the cores. And the founders of the BIA sort of lent itself to needing improvement to that public realm, to the area that was a downtown Main Street area. And so the improvement, I think, really came out of that situation. Now the last letter, which is the A, really lends a lot of confusion because area kind of like, you might assume association, but what is it about an area? This is actually really important because the area actually defines our working area. This here on this slide is actually the downtown Barrie BIA area. It represents our members, and importantly, this is actually the area that our budget or special levy is utilized from. I just want to make a note that our budget or our special levy doesn't implicate the general tax base. It's a special levy specific to this area and specifically to the property and business owners. So it doesn't affect the residential tax base. So it's important to note those elements of it. Some history. The first BIA was established in 1970 at Bloor West Village. Downtown Barrie came shortly thereafter in 1972, and so that represents about 50 plus years of these organizations being around. The original 1970 Bloor West Village BIA really set the organization as an international model that's now replicated in similar but various forms throughout the world. There's the bylaw. There's a pretty old piece of virtual paper, but that's the Downtown Barrie bylaw. And we are one of 300 BIAs in Ontario, represented by the Ontario Business Improvement Association. These 300 BIAs represent 100,000 Main Street businesses in Ontario, and specifically to Downtown Barrie, about 350 local Main Street businesses. I just want to sort of pause on this point because I think it's important. I've used the word Main Street businesses very specifically because, categorically, we are kind of under the realm of a small business, but many definitions of small businesses are up to 100 employees. And when you look at the Main Street, it's hard to find a business that would even be close to that. And so really, we're more about 2, 3, 4, 5-person businesses within our local Main Street area. And these owners are our neighbors, they're our friends, they're our family. And I think COVID really highlighted the importance of our Main Street businesses to our community and to our local area. And I think, that sort of it shone light on the importance and the support that, Main Street businesses have received, as well as what they mean to our local community. On the other hand, when you look at these Main Street businesses collectively, they become a very, very big impact. You'll see further in my presentation that we've put together what we call our GDP, which is our gross downtown product. So it's a set of metrics that sort of put what a Main Street means in terms of perspective comparative to larger sort of entities or other businesses. And one of those metrics is that if we collectively took all the employees of these 350 Main Street businesses and pretended or imagined that it was a single business, we would be, the downtown as a separate single entity would be in the top 5 largest public employers and private employers within our city and county. And so again, collectively, that impact becomes very, very large. We are brought together through the Municipal Act, specifically Section 204 to 216. And so that ties our interactions and our formalities between the BIA and the city. And so we are currently working on a memo of understanding, a work in progress, that really gets to the granular aspects of how we work together between the city and the BIA. I went through many of the city plans and strategies, and here's a list of the many plans that note the downtown as part of their strategy, strategic plan, or plan. And I just want to pause again at one moment and bring up my favorite, and I'm going to go old school, and it's the Facade and Streetscape Improvement Study. And this goes way back to 1985. And one of the reason why it's my favorite, one, because it's typewritten, and it's hand-drawn, and it's a bit of a lost art these days. But I think more importantly, what this plan does, it reminds me of sort of being humble and not sort of putting the pressure on ourselves to come up with the latest and greatest and latest or newest sort of aspects. Many of the elements that you'll find in the current streetscape that we had just recently completed, which was completely amazing, are in this study. And to me, what that sort of brings forth is more about, maybe finding those good ideas, finding those great ideas of the past and implementing them and focusing on that, because a lot of that has happened. A lot of great plans have been established. And again, this is just a great reminder that we have those. And depending on how you look at it, the streetscape either took 3 years or 40 years. I guess it's up to you. Further, I went back and looked at some of the council's strategic priorities. I'm figuring up to 2010, the downtown was noted as a priority, but absolutely in the last 4 councils, the downtown was a strategic priority or a component of a strategic priority for the term. Further, we've got many partnerships, and these are many of the organizations that we consider partners that we work with in various formal matters or manners. And altogether, what I've just presented really creates a solid foundation from what to work from. And we really appreciate this foundation and the history and the partnerships and the relationships that are established, knowing that it supports the downtown and the potential that it has to offer. So what do BIAs do? There's 4 elements or aspects. We're an event facilitator. So many of the events that you are familiar with, Promenade Days, Craft Beer Barbecue Show of the past, is what we've hosted. We also support events through event facilitators, whether it be Barrie-licious, whether it be Talk is Free Theater or Theater by the Bay. We are supporters of those. And our objective is really to bring visitors to the downtown. We're an area marketer, and so we promote the area for people to come to, enjoy, and take in with friends and family. From there, our businesses, our members, can tie to and bring those people that are visiting the area into their businesses to support those businesses. We do it in various manners, whether it's traditional media, social media, or digital media. We're a public realm investor. So as I mentioned earlier, that public realm between the businesses, between our buildings, is really, really important to be safe, secure, beautiful, friendly, comfortable. And so investing in that public realm is a component of what we do. And then lastly, we're a policy and partner influencer. So as the slide that I just presented in terms of our partnerships, we're a small organization with small staff. And so we need to partner, we need to work with our local community members in order to, realize the potential that the downtown has and what it can do for our community. So let's imagine that those are our strategic pillars. We've followed good governance. We have a constitution, bylaws, policies, our organization structure. They are listed on our website as listed there. This is our organizational chart that highlights our board, our supporting committees, our staff org structure, and our operational areas. This is our current 2023 to 2026 VIA Board of Directors. This is our BIA staff team. And put that all together, and that creates a really strong roof. Further, we've got a strategic action map and we have a budget. This year's current budget is $684,387. It is pretty much to the dollar of 2022. And we have what we call our strategic action map. The one that is on the left was The one that guided us for sort of the last 10 years. The one on the right is what we're currently filling in as part of our new board, moving us forward for the next 4+ years. Again, you'll see here where we utilize our gross downtown product and all the different metrics that kind of put the downtown into a different perspective other than your mom and pop corner store. Putting that all together, we create a strong foundation of which pillars hold up a roof, of which we carry on a strategic plan and a budget that allows us to operate on an annual basis to do all the great things that are happening in the downtown and supporting our local businesses and ultimately supporting our community and our city. What I've actually, coincidentally enough, I'm a longtime downtown supporter and local business person that we're all familiar with. Craig Bush sent me this article about a week ago. And so I thought it was very relevant and timely in terms of why investing in the public space matters for cities. Can I click on this? Or are you able to? Perfect. I'll just touch on it briefly because I know just a matter of time. But the article is a great, and if we can't, that's fine, but it's a great reference in terms of the importance of investing into the public realm within your core, whether it's from a development perspective, whether it's from a business perspective, a community perspective, or an individual perspective. That investment, whether it's making the city more walkable, making the city or the downtown more pedestrian friendly. Those so ultimately support. Support our local business, make our public space more inviting and friendly, and so it's a very nice third-party reference that I thought again was timely and felt that it would be a good time to share, and you can read. And happy to discuss after our meeting at any point in time downtown for a coffee, a craft beer, or otherwise. I think that's, if we go back to the presentation. I hope our counselor approves. I see he's looking over right now. And thank you.
Thank you, Craig. You've done a lot of these presentations. I don't remember you getting claps before. I gotta be honest.
The big audience, I guess, is a nice feature. A little more nerve-wracking, but I'll take it.
Well, thank you for the presentation this evening. And Councillor Nixon is unable to be with us this evening. He isn't feeling the greatest, but Councillor Nixon, would you like to ask some questions first? Sorry, we can't hear you, Councillor Nixon. You have to unmute.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I am a little under the weather, but I'm here via Zoom, and I just want to thank Mr. Stevens for his presentation, and I share his optimism for the downtown of Barrie, and I just want to thank him and his staff and the entire board for all the positive things that they are doing to improve our downtown core, despite some of the challenges that we're currently facing. So I don't necessarily have any particular questions. I just wanted to thank him. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nixon. Are there any questions or comments on the table? We'll start with Councillor Morales, and then I'll go to Councillor Harris, then I'll go to Councillor Kungle. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Nettle. That whole audience is for you, Mr. Stevens. I'm sure that whole audience is for you. I'm sure on the back it says Shop Local, I know that. So thank you for the presentation. In the report that we got last week, it was brought to my attention the category 4 website, and there was a few other words. I went from 6,000 last year to 40,000 and change. I was just wondering if we wanted to afford you the opportunity to clarify and maybe update us on good initiatives that the BI is taking that's just different from last year.
Yep, yeah, for sure. So just right off the top to note that the overall budget, as I mentioned in the presentation, hasn't changed 2022 to 2023. There's been some reallocations. In particular, on our working budget, our website is social media and communications. And so it brings together, I think, some previous categories that were split up. So the website, as noted in there, actually includes a split between the agency that we work with to do our graphic design and help assist with some of our social media posts. We've retained a professional photographer and a videographer to capture everything that we do throughout the year to assist with that content, that digital content that ultimately goes into our social media and our website. To our assets. And then there's a component there that about $5,000 that is going into specifically social media advertising and our email distribution list.
Okay, thank you for that. I didn't have an issue with it when I kind of made the request last week. It's just when a budget goes 800% up. Yep. By the way, you are right, the overall number is identical. So I know it was just a shifting, but when something goes up 800%, I just wanted an answer. And I don't blame you. I think, Deputy Mayor Thompson, I think there's a reason why you guys are hiring professional photography, which, by the way, I will always support professional photography. Yep. You have something to show now. It's not just the soul and the heart of the businesses that you've had, but the beautification, the effort people are putting into their patios, and the great work that yourself and your team has done, and I'll specifically shout outs to your staffer, Ms. Jensen, and as well as Ms. Zukbig. There's lots of murals, and I understand some paint is not going to fix a lot of the deep issues we have, but it's getting to that critical mass. So absolutely, you need to be able to broadcast that and market it. At the end of the day, you're marketing it for people to come. One other question regarding this is, in the COVID years, the City Council gave money to the BIA to subsidize, I guess, if you will, the open air Dunlop initiatives. We needed lifelines for downtown businesses. That was one of the best ways to get money where it needed to be to get doors opened. I know there's another money thing this year, and I am grateful for the stipulations that if you do get grants from other levels of government, that kind of we get refunded appropriately, and that means all you taxpayer dollars. But right now it's still more or less temporary, meaning next year we're going to have to do something. So I'm asking this just the way I fairly asked it to the farmers market, and I will ask it to any other service provider. It looks like it's temporary funding, but now that it's more than 2 years, it's becoming unofficially stabilized funding, which means it comes out of everybody's taxpayer dollars here, which is fine. I'm just wondering, what would give you confidence? Like, do you want to see that just like stabilized, meaning the city will just now in perpetuity give this money every year for open air Dunlop? Is it something that the BIA could start doing on their own and not requiring the city to do it, or something else? I'm just trying to address the elephant in the room because, again, yearly subsidies that go more than 3 years is basically a stabilized one.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very good question. What I was hoping to do in the presentation as well is really presenting that any investment into the downtown is a good investment and that there's a good return on that investment. And so first and foremost, we would only ask, and we obviously completely appreciate any support that we get, but that we would offer a return on that investment and that it's worthwhile. And that I think as I presented, that there's some precedent setting in that the downtown is a priority, and therefore it is worth supporting in that manner. That being said, in terms of our own operational plan, we want to do what we can do on our own, ultimately. That is a goal, and then support, just gives us that sort of that next step in that.
Okay, perfect. Ms. Schlichter, moving forward, if you were to get direction, would you need verbal direction or more motion direction to maybe for next year have the aim to enter into a more formal agreement with BIA? Because Mayor Nuttall, I think this might be a good opportunity to get KPIs from the BIA. They already have them. It's just like data that we can then take to our task force and we can do with our metrics with Access Barrie, so we can just more or less formalize the open air Dunlop subsidy a little bit more. Is that something, so to clarify my question, would you need more of a motion, or is that verbal direction that you could take? And would, I guess, having the discussion now to have a target for March and February 2024, would that be enough time?
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Morales. We are currently working through an MOU-type document to sort of articulate some of the areas with our relationship where we support, but I would say if there are specific things that you would want included, that a council motion would probably be the best option to do that.
That's not to handcuff the situation, that's just to formalize it and give you peace of mind that it's stabilized. I know when I was on the library board, they lived on an allowance essentially for some things, and when you stabilize funding, it's better for long-term planning. My final question, Mayor Nuttall, I don't know which staffer this goes to, so I'll just let a staffer pick it up. I had to request in a friendly manner for the BI to come and do a presentation. Would we need a motion, or could it just be a verbal directive that the BI just become a service provider that is expected to just do presentations every year with the rest of them?
Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Morales. The BIA is not considered a service partner under, because their budget's not large, and like they're a service partner, but not one that has to provide an annual presentation because their budget's not large enough. So if council wishes to have them come present annually, I think a motion just saying that they present annually when their levy comes to council, or however, or whatever timeline you would like them to present.
Perfect. Thanks so much. I'll work with yourself in your office later to do that. That's all, Mayor Nuttall.
Thank you, Councilor Morales. Just a moment of clarification. How much of the budget for the BIA comes from the City of Barrie? Obviously, there's a piece of it because we recently approved it, but I believe that was tied to open air.
So the city, it was 30,000.
30,000?
Yeah.
So we contribute $30,000 a year?
Well, in this case, to open air Dunlop specifically. That was our ask.
Globally overall throughout your entire budget, what's not taken from the property owners and the businesses in terms of a contribution from city taxpayers? Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Through you to Mayor Nuttall. So the city doesn't provide any direct funding within their operating budget. There, as Mr. Stevens indicated, council has passed indirectly contributions to the open air Dunlop. So there's no direct support on a regular basis from the city.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Okay. I'll now, I think, is that the floor? Thank you. Councillor Harris, you are next.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Nuttall, and thank you, Ms. Stevens. Yeah, you mentioned City of Barrie as one of the, I guess, the pillars, and certainly in the last few years with the big dig and the streetscape improvements and open air Dunlop and the patio program that was born and expanded out of COVID necessity in Meridian Place. There's lots of great examples of that. I don't know if it's partnership or collaboration, but that connection to, investment in the downtown, improving the downtown. I was wondering, and I appreciated Councillor Morales' questions around open air Dunlop, and I'm wondering if the budgeted amount reflects the appropriate and wanted amount of open air Dunlop closure, I guess, open air because we closed the street, or is it reflected on what you can afford to do? So if you had more money, would you close it more often? And we saw the nice streetscape in the article that you showed us, right? So I'm wondering if you're at the max or whether you would like to do more.
Yeah, I think we would love to do more. I think there's some lessons learned. I was able to we were able to forecast sort of this scenario. There was obviously, for the right reasons, a lot of money that was available to support, main streets and downtowns and communities, to bring people back out, to support our businesses, through COVID and through the ongoing recovery. A lot of that funding now, because it was available not through the municipality but through other governments, is no longer available. And so you've kind of gone from this high to now back to reality. So this is what we can afford. I think one other thing, last year we did 22 Saturdays. Taking a small step back to go forward, I think, is a good idea, because what we learned is the better performing Saturdays were connected to a theme and to a robust sort of offering. And sometimes to do 22 of those, that's difficult. And so to scale that back. But yeah, the goal or the vision is that, Dunlop Street becomes a pedestrian-focused street in more of a permanent fashion, whether that's seasonally, weekends or such. So we're working kind of what we can work with now and taking that step forward again.
Great, thank you. Maybe one last question. The activation of Meridian Square, I mean, it's obviously a great resource and an attraction, and having the pleasure of being down there last summer with the Emerging Arts Showcase was fabulous. So can you give us a bit of a taste of what we can expect maybe this summer with activation of Meridian?
Yeah, so again, each of the Saturdays, so we're doing each of the 10 Saturdays, an open air has a live music component. We're working with a local production group that has access to some great local acts, but then some also great sort of on the rise, whether they're Juno award-winning or Juno nominated performers that will be on the stage. We're bringing back our Wednesday night Launch Your Luminatas, which is our outdoor movies in partnership with the Barrie Film Festival. So that will start in July, and go July and August. And then, I think there's just a lot of general interest from the community to utilize that space as well. Part of our activation is using the stage, but using the entire space. So whether that's bringing our local businesses into it, conducting yoga classes, doing art classes, doing those types of things, and really showcasing the entire space. And I think the other exciting aspect as well is that through one of the FedDev grants, we were able to enhance Meridian Place. So you're going to see a few new enhancements, including a water bottle filling station, some new seat toppers so those concretes are a little more comfortable, about double the chairs, tables and chairs that are out there. So it's really going to make the space even that much more inviting.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. I have Councillor Kungl, then Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Nettle, to Mr. Stevens. Thank you for the presentation. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you yet in person since your return, so welcome back to that position. We're fortunate to have you. And it's great to see Sarah and Stacy in the audience. And I do want to talk a little bit about just access to resources through your team and how beneficial they've been. So I guess I'll start with a question. You mentioned Lawn Chair Luminata, and I'm hoping you could express or let me know, and it could be a different conversation over a coffee or whatnot, but how can we bring Lawn Chair Luminata as an example into other parts of the city? So whether that's through sitting down with staff to say, this is what it takes to plan that. So it's not on a burden of the BIA. So you're staying within your catchment and your mandate, but is there an opportunity for councillors or residents within other wards to kind of learn about how do you make that happen and activate space that way? And is there something where we can actually help to replicate or expand access, and not to say you're not accessible, but to say, maybe I could do a Lawn Chair Luminata in Ward 3 in some of our green space and activate that with other themes happening during culture days or art in the park. And so I'm keen to hear, and not necessarily tonight, but are there things that are teachable for us to say, this is how much money it would take, this is the resources you need, and this is possible to replicate outside of the downtown if there's an interest to do so. I think there's a lot of learning through the events and activities that your staff have conducted, and you've led in that space, and I think your reputation is very strong for that. So love to see how I can kind of also look at offering that to residents out of the downtown, in addition to what you're doing. And the other piece I'd like to ask is, through COVID, compliments to the team. One piece comes to mind, seeing RibFest still continue at Georgian Mall in Ward 3 and being very innovative to say, rather than shutting things down, you pivoted and actually still supported access to some of our events in a modified way. So I want to thank you for that. I know it was appreciated, and I know the logistics were tricky but well managed. And on that, I would, in compliment, like to say, and I'm not sure if it was a one-off or, again, if this is something we can reach out to the BAA for in moderation, but I don't think we would have had a successful first Bike the Night event if it wasn't for access to Stacy. So in her, we were able to reach out as a resident community group that had permission to kind of launch something new. We had a vision, but of course, we were mobilizing residents for the first time at dusk at Meridian Square, and I think we probably wouldn't have had a successful emergency response or permit or appreciation of just logistics. So I respect the expertise of staff and want to thank you for making them available while they weren't part of that committee. You have extended access to your staff skill set, and I think that allows us to come back to the table, hopefully again, to say we want to do the event again, and we feel a bit more confident that we're able to carry that out successfully.
That's good. Yeah, thank you for that. I want to make a note, just to your point. I want to thank, and I can't take any credit for the COVID with the organization. I wasn't part of the organization during COVID, and so Stacy and Kristen and Sarah and the board, the councillors that were on the board through those 2 years did an amazing job. The former executive director at that point, Kelly, did an amazing job, steering the BIA through COVID and dealing with everything that it brought us that we know. And so I say thank you as well to them and their expertise, and they brought an organization to another level through that. So they did an amazing job, and I wasn't part of that whatsoever. With reference to your, in terms of the events that we put on, we were just at the Ontario BIA annual conference about a week ago in London, and there's a term that we use, I don't think it's original, but it's R&D, it's rip off and duplicate. And so we're happy to share what we've done, and if it can help, if it can help the city, other communities within our city, ultimately that helps the downtown as well. So we're happy to share and help out in that manner. Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Kungl. Thank you, Craig. Now, Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Nettle, thank you for the presentation. It was nice to have a bit of context and history as to the BIA, so I appreciated that. And I like the article shared by Craig Bush, Why Investing in Public Space Matters, and I completely agree with that. Our downtown is beautiful. It's stunning. There is no reason that our downtown should not be the envy of every city across the country. I mean, I take a look, the proximity to the waterfront. We have so much untapped potential in my mind. The downtown should be the economic engine of the entire city. Yet I drive down Dunlop and I see boards on stores. I listen to the public and their fears and the perception of it not being safe. And it frustrates me, and I think you're doing great work. I actually would have loved to hear about more of the initiatives and the projects that BIA has done. You touched upon, and I know Councillor Harris listed them off. I think, we got to talk about those, and I would love to have, again, at a later date, a coffee. I want to hear more about that. Sure. But I also want to hear, and if you have time tonight to reflect on, what's the BIA going to do differently, right? Because there's obviously still some fixing that needs to be done downtown. And I just wonder, over the next year, 2 year, 3 years, what is the big priority of the BIA? What are you really hoping to accomplish or do? What's your number one initiative that you're focused on? And how? So that's my first question. And then my second question would be, how can city support the BIA on those efforts? And what's your expectation of city and the councillors around this table?
Yeah, great questions. I know that I could speak generally. We're actually, our board is coming together next week to do a little bit more of a formal sort of strategic planning process to look at some specific initiatives. And so, yeah, in the next couple of weeks, it'd be great to connect on those specifically. But generally, over the next few years, as I mentioned in the presentation, the streetscape, I call it like the bones. We've redone our bones. We've got this beautiful streetscape. We've got a beautiful public gathering space that is now connecting our downtown from structurally. And, that work also now sheds light of where those other opportunities are to do that structural work. The opportunity for us now is to go what I'm calling like the softscape, the nooks, the crannies, the curiosities. We've taken a great step. I'll mention Sarah Jensen, our communications and public realm coordinator. She's got the largest title in the organization, but she's taken her passion of public art and made it a reality. So you'll see a number of murals on buildings now going up. Further, there's going to be actual art installations. The ones that have just gone up, really, really cool. It's called the Fab Tray, and it takes these trays that were actually originated in Barrie back in the 60s and 70s, became a sort of a worldwide trendy phenomena for a while, and then the oil crisis actually put them out of business. But all of our grandparents had these trays. Anyway, Sarah's done with 16 local artists a fantastic art installation that has put 16 of these trays in large format up in buildings. So those are kind of the initiatives, is making those nooks and crannies, those transitions between, say, Dunlop and Collier Street, interesting and ultimately safe. So to your point, a lot of the locations that we're picking or choosing or influencing these locations is based on the CEPTED study done by the police. There's crime prevention through environmental design. So we're looking at all those to address, what we hear, which are in some cases perceptions, to try and convey the reality, but understanding that perception is reality and that we have to work through that. I learned a long time ago, you may recall some of your memories, we had a development called the Blue Sails that was going to be at the Chase McEachran parking lot. And I remember, that was going to be the golden ticket. That was going to bring, X number of residents down, and it was happening. And then it was 2009, and the World Economic System exploded, as did this development. And I realized quickly that as a BIA, as an organization, we got to be able to focus on what we can do, which is a whole bunch of small stuff that collectively will make a big impact, much like what our Main Street businesses do. And so that's, again, that's where the patio programs and all those things that we do. But that being said, if we look at the Lake House, we look at Debut, the residents on Owen, as developments that are significantly along the way of actually becoming reality, that's 1,000 units. So arguably 2,000 people in the next 2 to 3 years, 4 years that will now be living downtown, and that's the key. And if there's anything to ask council and city, it's to help those developments, proceed through in the appropriate manners, to make sure that they fit within our community, but ultimately get done, and that will support the downtown and definitely realize the potential, because that's what I've heard for years and years and years, is that potential. We all know it's there, and to realize it and make it a reality. So I hope that answered.
It did, thank you.
Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Nuttall, and thanks for your presentation. I'm going to be really quick. I think it's worth highlighting how robust your new website is, though, and people to visit downtownbarrie.ca. But my question would be, when it comes to these live performances, when you go onto your events page, it speaks about all the other events, but there's nothing about the live performances. So where would members of public be able to go to find out when these performances are occurring at Meridian Place?
Yeah, it's a great question. One of our initiatives is to sort of refine the public-facing component to our website so they are easy. But probably our best source are our social media channels. So Instagram, so it's at Downtown Barrie for Instagram, and our Facebook page as well is really where we post a lot of our relevant happenings. And we have a newsletter. We've originally had an internal newsletter, which has gone to our businesses and our partners, but we just recently launched an external newsletter to about 4,000 local residents, and it's open for anybody to sign up that may want to get we send it out once every 2 weeks, and it lists the most recent activities and things that are happening in the downtown.
Great, thank you. Not that I'm going to tell you how to do your business, but I think it's probably a lost piece if you're not going to be updating the website with things like that too, because most people are doing Google searches to try and find that, and you don't necessarily see everything on different social media feeds. The other thing that I'd kind of like to throw out there too, that I've seen very successful in other municipalities, because obviously it's great that you host local talent, but is a lot of these tribute type groups. I know Newmarket, for instance, does them on Thursday nights every week, and there's well over 1,000 people coming out to those things, and it really does shut down the downtown core on those evenings. So that's just my 2 cents about some of the other areas that you could probably use to expand, because obviously we want to bring as many people into the downtown as we can.
Oh, that's great. Actually, speaking of tribute bands, if anyone knows a Kenny Loggins tribute band, let me know, because we're putting on for the Barrie Air Show, sort of shameless plug here, but the Barrie Air Show on June 10th, we're showing Maverick on the Saturday night with a lot of the pilots will come down for that. But we want to do some music part too, and if you have Kenny Loggins tribute band, that would be great. Let us know, because we'll put them up on stage.
I just recruited Councillor Harris for you.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. Thanks for the presentation. Quick question. So I go downtown every day. And, you know, I like to sometimes drive, sometimes I walk, sometimes I park. And, you know, Councillor Jim Harris and I go for breakfast almost, you know, once a month on the Sundays or coffee. Is there anything you guys can do to start controlling the hours of the businesses? And I know that's really tough, but like, it's really sporadic. Sometimes you go and it's open, it's not open, and it's hard to get that flow into our downtown, because if you go to the door once and it's locked, like, it's really hard to get that customer back and in the, you know, the energy that the downtown needs. So I don't know if it's within your policy or, you know, to tell people how to run their business. I know that's a little bit tough, but like, for example, in a mall, they set the hours of the mall, like, and you must obey them, or, you know, there's penalties. I was wondering if that's something you've ever considered. And that's one question. And the second one, I like the thought of the pedestrianization. I'd love to see a pilot project and something you guys can work with a one-way street in the warmer months. You know, I find it so frustrating with the people picking up delivery. They park when the bullards are out. It stops traffic completely. So then people find alternative routes, and you're losing the exposure. So there are a couple things, but I'd love to hear if there's anything you guys could do for that.
Actually, it's a great question with regards to the hours. So it's so funny because I had a slide. I chose not to put it in because I was considering time, but it's a story that I told in previous presentations years ago. So hours has been a challenge. And we've looked at hours, and what we found actually was that, generally speaking, hours opened, there was consistency in terms of like open 8 hours or 9 hours. But there was discrepancy in terms of, you know, all the businesses at one point in time. We can't, so like a mall, we can't obviously stipulate that. So what we actually did, going back, is the original, like the pilot program for the patios. So, you know, one of the initiatives was to fill a gap in time. So we looked at literally a 24-hour clock, and we had 9 to 5 sort of retail services, which were robust. We had 11 till 3 in terms of the nightlife happening, so 11 p.m. to 3 a.m. And there's nothing wrong with a good, robust nightlife, but where we were missing was that 5 o'clock to 11 o'clock. And so what happened is that the perception, like the nightlife got sort of this perception of craziness because a whole bunch of energy was coming in at 11 from a really quiet period of time. And so when we looked at the patio program, we thought there was an opportunity to fill a gap of time. So the original program actually stipulated that the patios could only open at 5 and had to close at 11. So that activity that was inside was now outside. And so then when those businesses that closed at 5 came out into the public realm, they saw all of a sudden a couple hundred people and realized, oh wow, there's people down here. And maybe through sort of a peer pressure environment would think, maybe I should stay open. And the suggestion was that, you know, 70% of all retail, it's some stat, occurs after 5 o'clock, like just generally, right? So having that statistic, creating an environment that when somebody comes out sees that, okay, it might be worth it, that if you just shifted your hours, because the feedback was always, well, I don't want to add 3 or 4 hours to my payroll because it costs money, and that's fair. But if you just shifted them, then you maintained your payroll, but you captured that period of time. And so that was the direction we took, is let's look at how we can fill, you know, time such that the majority of businesses could be open with the majority of people that would come down that had the majority of options, you know, to take in. And so the patio program was that. Ultimately, it was successful enough that, you know, it's now open. Well, they probably want to open 24 hours if they could. Everyone enjoys a patio. But that was a specific sort of approach to address that. So it was a good point. Your second question was, the one-way. Yeah, again, what I've seen with pedestrianized streets in sort of my research is that, you know, there is some, for lack of a better term, some patience or maybe slow steps. What I've seen is that those spaces that sort of thought that a main street closed is an attraction enough ultimately failed more times than not, that the street can be closed, but it has to be activated and animated. And you need the demand to support it. So just to close the street down and say, I hope they come, sometimes or a lot of times won't work. So it's that balance of activation and attraction with demand that then sort of builds together to fulfill that vision of a pedestrian-only street, or maybe some sort of configuration of one way, so that it gets to that point. And that's, again, the 22 Saturdays, the 10 Saturdays, all that stuff is working towards that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from members of council? CEO Prowse.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. I just wanted to jump in on one of Mr. Stevens' comments, because I thought it might be helpful for new members of council to recognize that while the question was asked about financial contributions from the city, and in raw dollars we actually give a fairly small amount. Our partnership with the BIA is actually quite robust, and Mr. Stevens talked about the patio program. That's a partnership between the city and the BIA and its members, where literally for pennies on the square footage, restaurants and bars are able to expand their capacity during the summer, a direct benefit to those businesses. In addition to which, the infrastructure that members of council talked about in the downtown, millions of dollars of infrastructure in partnership with the BIA has been installed over the last many years, and in some cases, some of the fundraising led by the BIA. So there's really strong partnership there. Ms. Schlichter's team does a tremendous amount of work and has resources tied up doing programming either separate from or in partnership with the BIA. And as members of council probably know, a couple of years ago, council approved additional funding for a cleanup crew to run seasonally through the BIA, keeping those streets clean and as presentable and beautiful as I think Councillor Hamilton spoke of. So I just wanted to reinforce, while there isn't a lot of dollars that go from the city directly to the BIA, our partnership is quite strong, robust, and we are intertwined on a number of initiatives.
If I can sort of echo on that, totally, like, the partnership is so key, and I hope I conveyed that. Again, as Mr. Prost indicated, like, we're totally appreciative of it. I had the opportunity to present at the Ontario BIA conference that I mentioned earlier. That was a couple weeks ago. And that was an element that I highlighted, that what we've been able to do has been literally on that foundation of partnership with the city. And, together, great things can happen, which I think has been the case. And again, helps us continue to realize that potential. So it's great points there.
Thank you, CEO Prost. Thank you, Craig. Craig, I have a few questions that I'd like to ask. And I think Councillor Hamilton was probably going down the road that I would go and have done in private with you, so I'm not going to shock you with anything here. You'll be happy to know. But there is a perception issue that we're dealing with, right? And part of the perception issue is being worked on through attracting more people to live in the downtown. Part of the perception is attracting people to visit downtown, to come to Open Air Dunlop, to come to the air show, which is, just puts our entire downtown and waterfront on display in a way that it's never activated, quite frankly. But, the feeling is that we need to do more to keep it clean, right? And when I say keep it clean, so I'm not misinterpreted here, is to actually make sure that the garbage is cleaned up, and then, God forbid, the needles are cleaned up, which we know are an issue. Can you describe what the BIA does with the city in terms of that partnership to ensure that the downtown remains clean and an inviting, welcoming place?
Yeah, there's a lot. Again, the BIA specifically, we've got, as I mentioned on one of my slides, so we've got a clean team. So we've got two individuals that are out daily. You probably won't see them because they're out very early, Danny Houle and Robert Wilson. And so, they are out daily, again, getting those sort of nooks and crannies of garbage and whatnot. We've got, again, a great partnership with the operations department that assists in just general cleanup that's beyond the regular garbage pickup to make sure that it's clean. We've got a great partnership with the horticulture, Mona Boyd, in terms of beautification and flowers, and looking so forward because of reasons, technicality reasons, we weren't able to fully beautify the main street, but we are this year. So you'll see the planters, you'll see hanging baskets back up, you'll see what it looks like, what it ultimately could look like together. We've got a great, from a pure safety standpoint, we've got a great partnership with the Barrie Police. The two officers that have recently been deployed, Officer Mike and Officer Colin, have done an amazing job. They've touched to pretty much every business in the downtown, made a face-to-face introduction. Officer Colin is, I believe, has a background in social work or some aspect of that can assist with those folks that are in distress, that are being challenged in the environment, and get them to the services they need. And, again, we're looking forward to some further outreach support that I think is coming in the near future as well. Working with the social services is key as well. And for a BIA, it's interesting because, again, if you look at our 4 pillars, public realm investor is one of our pillars. And so while that's hardscape and softscape and some of those things that we've talked about, that safety component is in our public realm, and that aspect of social community challenges is in our public realm. And so we have to figure out how to be part of that, but not get out of our scope of expertise as well as scope of budget. So in a way that we can partner and support to make sure that that aspect of downtown life, of reality, is assisted and can help with all the challenges that brings.
Thank you. And I think the key that I heard in there is something that I think has been missing for a very long time, and that is the collaboration between, you said, Outreach, which is the county, the police department, the city of Barrie, the BIA, all going in unison. I know it's something that Councillor Hamilton cares about deeply and has brought up many times, but it's nice to hear that is actually falling into place, because it's the only way. It is the only way that we're going to make headway on that front. Finally, I had the opportunity to go to Harrogate there last weekend, one of our twins, and I met a fella who I swear was Craig Stevens, because he was the head of the BID, the Business Improvement District.
Yeah.
And it was interesting, you start out, they're trying to put the best of their city forward, and we're putting the best of our city forward. And then we, about halfway through, said to him, well, we're dealing with this problem. And, I state the problem, and then he's got about 15 minutes of like, yeah, we got that problem too, and here's what's happening. And then you go into the next thing, and so on and so forth. I thought it was really interesting, because we are sometimes down on our own downtown, and I'm probably guilty of that sometimes too. But to see and hear those things being dealt with in other parts of the world, same size city, westernized country, the mother of all westernized countries, and it was really, really interesting to hear. But one of the things that they did do, and they are working on, and you talked about the clock, was working with their social services so that there wasn't a time of day where there wasn't somewhere to go that wasn't Dunlop Street, right? And so I'd love to see you engage in that conversation going forward and collaborate with social services more on that front. And I know it's something that Councillor Kungor and others have been talking about as well.
Yeah.
So thank you for your presentation. Sorry, I interrupted you there.
Oh, I just because I'm so happy to hear that. Again, it's amazing. I was at years ago. I was at a symposium of about 200 international BIs and bids, and again, whether it was 2 million people, 3 million people, or 20,000 people, those same challenges came up. And what was great about the industry is, like, I'd love to chat with this fellow. I know that there's an effort to connect us because, we're all at different points along that spectrum. And so we can help others and others can help us. And like I said, that rip off and duplicate is actually there to be done. And so you look forward to that.
Well, the invitation's been given to him to join us for the air show. So we'll see if that happens. And then you folks will have some really good time together to compare and contrast and find.
We'll send an F-18 over to get him.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure we'll do that, but I'm sure something will get figured out. Thank you again on behalf of the city, and I know that these aren't always the easiest evenings. There's a lot of questions asked, and certainly part of our job is accountability. So We thank you for coming with the information. Certainly we can look forward to furthering our relationship between the BIA and the City of Barrie. One last thing from Britain that I found really interesting. The City of Harrogate is actually a contributing member of the bid, in the sense that for the municipally owned lands in the area, they actually have to pay to be part of the business improvement district. I thought that was really interesting. Wouldn't be very well received around this table, but
we love it.
but it was something that was very interesting. All right, have a good night, Craig, and thank you to you and your team.
Thank you for the opportunity, and please reach out anytime as well. Thank you.
The Deputy Mayor is asking that I step away from the microphone now. So before we get into the committee reports, I would just ask for a 2-minute recess on an item that I have to discuss with one of our members before we begin. It's not to do with this specific item, and it was just some questions that were asked to me earlier, and we didn't have a chance because of the earlier meetings to be able to discuss that. So ask for a 2-minute recess, and then we will convene. Deputy Mayor Thompson, I believe you have the motions for this evening.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Kungl, that Section A of General Committee Report dated April 26, 2023, as circulated, be received.
It's moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Kungl that Section A of General Committee Report dated April 26, 2023, as circulated, be received. 23-G-083, the report of the Finance and Responsible Governance Committee dated March the 29th, 2023, and 23-G-084, the report of the Affordability Committee dated April the 5th, 2023. Are there any questions or comments with regards to the two items in the report? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that carries. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Kungl, that Section B of the General Committee Report dated April 26, 2023, as circulated, be adopted.
It's moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Anne Marie Kungl that Section B of the General Committee Report dated April 26, 2023, as circulated, be adopted. This includes 23-G-085, the 2022 year-to-date internal audit status report, the 2022 fraud and wrongdoing program activity, the 2022 summary of internal audit activity, and the 2023 internal audit work plan. 086, 2022 investment management annual report. 087, referred by motion 23-G-006, correspondence from the circulation list dated January 11th, 2023 regarding the Barrie Farmers Market. 088, referred by motion 23-G-016, memorandum from circulation list dated January 25th, 2023 concerning an update on the permanent market. 089, referred by motion 23-G-047, correspondence from circulation list dated February 15th concerning the Freshwater Action Plan Fund. 090, free transit for seniors. 091, 2022 budget and business plan year-end report. 092, 2023 tax rates. 093, the invitation to present to Council, Simcoe County District Health Unit, and 094, invitation to present to Council, the Barrie Sports Hall of Fame. Are there any questions or comments with regards to the motions? Councillor Kungl.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Nuttall. I have an amendment to item on the agenda 23G-087. That's with regards to the farmers market. So I'd like to table that motion 23G-087 of Section B of the General Committee Report dated April 26, 2023, as circulated, be amended as follows: that we change the date to that we change the date to report back from by the end of April 2023 to prior to summer recess, and I can speak to that. And that's seconded by Councillor Rietma.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. It's moved by Councillor Kungl and seconded by Councillor Rietma that motion 23-G-087 of Section B of the General Committee Report dated April 26, 2023 as circulated be amended as follows: to change the date to report back from the end of April 2023 to prior to summer recess. Are there any questions or comments with regards to the change in date? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of the amendment? It carries on the main motion as amended. Are there any questions or comments?
I would like to speak, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. The ward councillor, I would like to thank all of the residents for coming forward to speak
Sorry,
tonight.
Councillor Negussi, that's the next item.
Sorry. Yes, Mayor Nadal. It's been really busy day, that's why. So I would like to speak to a motion 23G090 concerning a free transit for senior. As a Senior and Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting held on April 24th, the Transit and Parking Strategy Department met with a committee speaking concerns on the referred second day for free transit for senior per week. And the second day would be in addition to the Tuesdays currently offered to senior to a free transit. The committee provided their input and agreed that Tuesday would be the preferred second day for free transit for seniors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Negussi, for adding those comments. Ms. James Reid, can you maybe take note of those as feedback from the Seniors and Accessibility Advisory Committee?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Nettle. We also have a memo on circulation, and we will be communicating that starting June 1st, it will be Thursdays and Tuesdays. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ms. James Reid. Are there any other questions or comments with regards to the amended motion on the floor? Councillor Kungl.
Thank you, Mayor Nettle. If I may take some liberties on the item that was shared by Councillor Negussi, I was able to communicate with members of the Barrie Ontario Health Team today from a health sector service that I sit at with Councillor Jim Harris, and I was able to identify the work of the Seniors Advisory Committee and staff and council about support to an extra day. So I can tell you, while we don't necessarily sit on those health tables formally, it was well received, and I think the recognition of the leadership of staff and council around support to seniors as a population of interest for the City of Barrie was complimented. So I'd like to say thank you to those that supported this. It's important.
Thank you, Councillor Kungl. Are there any other questions or comments with regards to the items contained inside the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of the motion as amended? And it carries. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Kungl, that Section C of the General Committee report dated April 26, 2023, as circulated, be adopted.
It's moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Kungl, the Section C of the General Committee report dated April 26, 2023, as circulated, be adopted. 23-G-095. This is a confidential personal information matter, appointments to the Investment Board. Are there any questions or comments with regards to the appointments to the Investment Board? Seeing none, all those in favor? And it carries. Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Kungl, that Section I of the General Committee report dated April 26, 2023, as circulated, be adopted.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Kungl that Section I of the General Committee report dated April 26, 2023, as circulated, be adopted. This is 23-G-101, establishing a lobbyist registry and appointment of a lobbyist registrar. Are there any questions or comments from others around the table? I just have two quick comments that I wanted to make on this. The first is that there's a piece of the report that speaks to members of council in the term of ward councillors, and I think that there, I asked some questions about this, so I wanted to share the answers. That if there is an item coming forward, that it's not just the ward councillor for that ward, but any councillor, member of council can reach out to ask for questions of clarification. Those questions of clarification are not what the lobbyist registry is identifying in a need for lobbying. It is when the organization or the developer or the individual business that's wanting to do business with the City of Barrie is turning that conversation into asking for something, asking for members of council to do something, that it becomes lobbying. And so I think that there was a very clear piece there that I just wanted to make sure was communicated, that conversations and communications are not the target of a lobbyist registry, the act of lobbying is. And the individuals that need to document and clarify this lobbying are those that are doing the lobbying, not the members of council. And I think that that is a very good thing for us to note going forward, that both as a member of council, we're all able to come to the table with the same information. If it was something happening in Deputy Mayor, I almost called you Deputy Mayor Ward, like I was that close. Deputy Mayor, yeah, no, I am now, I owe you a beer, that's fine. Deputy Mayor Thompson, I didn't even serve with a Deputy Mayor Ward. If it's happening in Deputy Mayor Thompson's ward, and I want to ask a question, that's okay. That's not going to be covered on the list. If Deputy Mayor Thompson wants to ask something in Councillor Hamilton or Councillor Morales' ward, that's okay. Where it is not okay is when it gets flipped back into lobbying, and then if it's not properly accounted for, that's an issue. So I just want to make sure that that was on the record, publicly stated. It was some issues that were both brought to me and I kind of struggled with over the last number of days, and I know that our clerk's department and our clerk have done a heck of a lot of work on this and are going to continue to make sure that any other items that get brought up over the next several months are encompassed in the report back that we requested through this motion. I'll now call the vote on this matter, and I would ask for a recorded vote, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor Nuttall. I will start with Councillor Rietma.
Yes.
I don't think he's online. Councillor Nixon? Is he gone? Okay, I'll come back to Councillor Nixon to see if he's...
Sorry about that, yes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kungle?
Yes.
Councillor Corser?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Councillor Negussi?
Yes.
Councillor Harvey?
Yes.
Councillor Harris?
Yes.
Councillor Morales?
Yes.
Councillor Hamilton?
Yes.
And Mayor Nuttall.
Yes.
The vote carries. Thank you.
You have none, or any other inquiries around the table this evening? Councillor Kungle.
One, and I'll be quick, but I wanted to, through you, Mayor Nuttall, and to staff, I think it's, we've got staff this evening tied to the wastewater and some pretty, I thought, impressive outcomes, and I had a question regarding it. So if I may, through you, Mr. Arrhenius Sundarin, to yourself or to staff present, I saw in a report that staff talked a bit about through wastewater initiatives, revenue generation of $125,000 by restarting a particular program tied to wastewater, I think this past June. And I didn't know if you could speak to that at all, if that was a net new program or something related to revenue we'll be seeing more of.
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Kungle, we've got Greg Jordan here, who's the manager of Wastewater Operations Branch. He leads the wastewater operations team that's responsible for all the good performance on the wastewater system. So I'd like to defer the question to him, and I think he'd be able to provide a more fulsome answer.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bala. Through you, Mayor. Good start. Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Kungle. Thank you for the question, first off. Yeah, our team's doing some really excellent work there, that the magnitude of it, we're just kind of now seeing in terms of savings or revenue. So what this was is it was the reinitiation of our hauled septage receiving program. This program did exist years and years ago. It was shut down due to, in 2014, due to impacts on the plant. It basically, chemical toilets kind of wiped out the whole treatment process, so it was just shut right down with very little interest in looking at it again for quite some time. It was only in the last couple of years that staff at the plant started thinking about, is this doable? And so with the environmental compliance team, we kind of changed the rules around it, put some different restrictions on it, and so far, no effect on the plant, and we did bring in about $120,000 last year in almost unanticipated revenue. I don't see any reason why we can't keep doing this, cautiously optimistic, forever. But, in terms of the actual dollar value, not quite sure if it's just a straight extrapolation yet. We'll kind of see how this year goes, but I'm hopeful that somewhere in the $200,000 a year range of revenue through receiving the hauled septage.
Thank you. I appreciate that, because I think in addition to that, you've leaned processes to see a return of about $320,000 or more just in how you've approached some quality improvement. And then in addition to that, you've created and reinstated a program that's generating revenue for the city. So I didn't know if typically that comes through our budget or around to kind of understand, a revenue generating program was quite substantial. So glad to hear it's not a pilot, but I didn't know if that would come back around future reporting that's embedded in what council will get, especially during, the economics of, I think, where we're seeing pressure points, and to see that coming out of the department, I thought was quite impressive.
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Congal, in terms of the savings, I think you see that in terms of cost avoidance, especially for electricity. Like if you look at the $450,000 in electricity savings, I guess you really see that in terms of us paying less for the electricity. And that's primarily from the cogeneration system. Similarly, the $315,000 is primarily from reduced sludge trucking. I think the team has been able to thicken the sludge that they generate, which gets trucked to the biosolids management facility. So just by reducing the volume, by thickening it, that results in significant truck savings.
Okay.
So in terms of how do you see it, I think you just see it in terms of cost avoidance from our annual budgets.
Okay. Thank you. And I didn't know if other staff had comments on that. Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to CEO Pros.
Through you, Mayor Nuttall, to Councillor Congal, I would just add that, as you may be aware, the budget now has an efficiencies section, so you should expect to see this type of great news captured in the efficiency section of the annual budget.
Thank you. And so my final comment, and that's great context to have, is just I'll look to staff to identify an outreach if there's anything there that you think would be great information for the Active Transportation Sustainability Committee to appreciate, or as you go forward, to help our residents kind of recognize some of the work that you're doing. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Congal. Are there any other inquiries around the table?
That was the update from Barrie City Hall. Thank you.